Hello, my name is Mike Brown, and today I'm going to be discussing Case Study 31, focusing on the international energy firm British Petroleum's oil rig explosion crisis, most famously known as the BP oil spill. The oil spill was one of the biggest stories of 2010, as BP was at the helm of the worst environmental disaster in U.S. history. A little bit about the explosion itself. The Deepwater Horizon oil rig, located in the Gulf of Mexico, took the nation by storm on April 20 of 2010 when it exploded. The tragedy led to 11 deaths and numerous injuries to the oil rig workers on site. More than 200 million gallons of oil leaked into the Gulf water. The oil polluted Gulf Coast water for several months with 3 million barrels of oil. The spill prompted loss of revenue and recreation for businesses and residents to the 5 states bordering the Gulf. Just a little more information on the oil spill and how much damage it caused exactly. Oil coated more than 1,000 miles of coastline in 6 states and covered over 40,000 square miles of the Gulf of Mexico. The damage to the Gulf is estimated to take decades to fully recover. Scientists have concluded that the BP oil spill killed thousands of marine mammals, sea turtles, birds, and fish, while contaminating their habitats. BP offered an explanation on the event, stating that the accident involved a well integrity failure, followed by a loss of hydrostatic control of the well. This was followed by a failure to control the flow from the well with the blowout preventer, BOP for short, equipment, which allowed the release of and subsequent ignition of the hydrocarbons. Ultimately, the BOP emergency functions failed to seal the well after the initial explosion. BP also issued out an apology statement expressing their regrets on the impact they've caused to the environment. Negative media coverage, however, and political pressure swarmed BP amidst the horrific images of the Gulf surfacing. BP CEO Tony Hayward depicted by the media as the villain in the public eye. Here are some examples I found online of the oil spill images from 2010. As you can see on the left, the oil is smothering the shoreline of the beach, and that beach stretches for miles and miles and miles, fully drenched in oil. On the right, you can see a pelican fully smothered in oily water. A month later, BP went on the offensive to try to get out in front of things and launched a PR campaign. The company invested approximately $50 million with this campaign. They purchased ads on Google, attempted to drive anyone searching for information about the oil spill to their website. Then they aired an ad campaign on television and on major U.S. newspapers the following month, containing BP CEO Hayward apologizing for the oil spill on camera and explaining BP's plan of action to clean up the environmental disaster. The commercial ad, however, received negative reviews, as critics stated that Hayward seemed insincere and unaware of the damage they've really caused in his apology. Shortly after the interview, Hayward made a remark stating, "I'd just like my life back," a statement that garnered harsh criticism from the public and media outlets. Here's a quick video I found on YouTube of the incident.
Well, it's more than a little ironic that BP, the former British Petroleum, has spent millions rebranding itself as the eco-friendly and green Beyond Petroleum. The company's next task is far more daunting: how to spin a disaster that still has no end in sight.
How do you say sorry for this, perhaps the greatest environmental disaster in human history? Images of marine life literally suffocating in oil.
The Gulf spill is a tragedy that never should have happened.
If you're BP, you craft a very skillful 60-second commercial featuring your CEO.
BP has taken full responsibility for cleaning up the spill in the Gulf.
Around pristine Lake Harriet today,
My name's Tom Lydon. I'm from Fox 9 News.
we conducted our own focus group.
We're all accustomed to corporate speak.
Most weren't buying it.
Well, it's nice that there was an actual apology.
I take it you don't take this commercial as being very sincere.
No, it's just their cover-up story.
I think they're kind of late to the game. They should have had these commercials airing a long time ago.
Paul Omot is the public relations guy you actually call in a crisis when the crude hits the fan, so to speak.
The fault I would have with this is that they don't show when this is going to end.
In part because no one knows when or what the end looks like. But Omot says the commercial scores in spiffing up CEO Tony Hayward's image after this off-the-cuff comment.
No one who wants this thing over more than I do. I'd like my life back.
I'd recommend that Tony get out on the beaches. I also encourage CEOs to be out there walking towards the issue, and they should walk towards the people that are most affected by this and address them directly.
Would you guys not go to a BP gas station because of this?
Already not going.
Omot believes commercials are fine, but the BP should draw a lesson from Toyota and communicate directly with customers at the pump.
I would put out things asking for feedback at the gas pumps. I would put up things saying, sign me up, I want email alert.
We will honour all legitimate claims.
But no commercial and no spin will change the reality in the Gulf. Ultimately, we're all bystanders, and given our country's fossil fuel addiction, perhaps complicit as well.
We will get this done. We will make this right.
After investigation, it was found that BP, rig owner Transocean, and cement contractor Halliburton all shared responsibility for the accident. BP sent a release to shareholders on June 3rd, ensuring that the Gulf spill was their top priority. More than $1 billion was spent in direct costs for the cleanup of the Gulf. Hayward was replaced as CEO in October of 2010. These are the logos of the companies involved in the oil rig spill of 2010, Halliburton, BP, and Transocean. On to the strengths and weaknesses of the campaign. Although I don't believe there were many strengths to this campaign, one solid fact BP could stand on was that they were worth more than $180 billion at the time of the explosion. So they had the means to pay for any cleanup or campaign or the damages essentially that they caused. The weaknesses of the campaign was, first and foremost, the insincere CEO and the apologies that he issued. Attempting to divert the blame early on consequently hurt their later campaign. Instead of jumping out in front of the issue when it first started and taking responsibility and saying that you were putting your efforts forward into righting the wrong, BP initially tried to divert the blame onto the other companies involved with the rig. As I stated earlier, they were trying to say that they were only responsible for the oil barrels on the rig because they didn't manufacture the rig or hire the workers for the rig. But again, in the general eye, everyone is to blame. Everyone takes responsibility. Everyone involved pays for it and gets it cleaned up. They should have gone, in my opinion, with a more forward approach rather than the cowardly blame game approach that they tried to initially come with. And finally, failure to sway the perception of the company in the eye of the public and the media. Again, the tactics early on and the insincere CEO forced the media to paint them in a negative picture, and the public saw them in a negative light, and the villains of the situation, essentially. Opportunities and threats of this campaign. Opportunities were that they could use social media, which they did. Social media updates to show active progress on the oil spill cleanup. They had a Twitter page that I researched, and they showed progress and people out there working, cleaning up the Gulf, putting in physical labor to get the Gulf situation handled accordingly and appropriately. They had a website that was easy to navigate, and the website provided information regarding the cleanup efforts. The threats to the campaign were obviously the media outlets painting them in a negative light, making it seem like they weren't really keeping up with their promises of cleaning the Gulf as they stated that they would, and that the Gulf was a priority to them. Environmentalists who they have offended by dumping the oil or causing an explosion for the oil to seek profusely out into the Gulf water. Consumers using the Gulf, consumers using the gas station. Once the gas station was pointing in a negative light, people would go shop somewhere else for the gas that you saw in the video. The lady said that she wasn't even shopping at BP for gas. She'd go to a different gas station. Because of the oil rig, people wouldn't want to support and buy their gas. And finally, competing rival gas stations, rival oil companies could use this opportunity while BP, one of the richest companies in the world and a powerhouse in the oil industry, is basically down in 2010. They can see this as an opportunity to gain momentum and track them down, essentially. Well, that was it for my presentation. Recommendations on how this could have been handled differently. I would say, well, again, I'm reiterating a fact that I stated earlier. They should have just jumped out in front of the situation early, stated and apologized for what happened. It's a tragedy. People lost their lives on this day. And instead of the insincere apologies, they should have just jumped right out in front of the situation, put forth a great effort and had a plan together, a package deal essentially, which they ended up doing later with millions of dollars invested. They should have just came out front with the package deal that would have painted them in a more positive light and had people see them as a company that cares about what they did to the environment and the well-being of others, and basically showing people that you are genuinely, truly apologizing and taking responsibility for your oil.